The Kid Man.
Hello lads, how's it going? Spider here from Spider LFC, and also Jack from Jack Mac LFC and Anfield Road TV, and we are the Kitmen. And we're going to welcome you today with a lovely guest today, Paul. He's joining us to talk about his dad, RONNIE Moran, and his previous works with books, his life growing up under his dad, and so forth. Now, if anybody in the chat has any questions, please let us know. Jump on straight away. We'll ask him as we're going along. So, Paul, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Nice to meet you, lads.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Awesome. Right, Panav, welcome to the chat. T12, how are you keeping? You all right? Welcome to the chat, guys. But we're just going to kind of ask you a few questions, Paul, basically about, I mean, as me growing up as an Irishman, I idolized your dad, really. I've been watching pretty much since 1986, Jack a few years after me, and I don't think there was anybody, with regards to me playing football, even as a kid, I don't think there was anybody that, for one thing, made me appreciate what went on in Liverpool at that time. The structure that was there, the way the training was done, and also a guy that I could look at and nearly scare the living shit out of me. Basically, if I was to look at him and say, "Man, if he coached me, he would," I'd say, I'd be thrown up for the next week at least, So, what was it like for you, growing up when you seen him in early days? Was he getting you into football? Was it something that you weren't into, but something that you might have got into, or was it just like what was the man like himself?
It was just football's just been my whole life, basically. Like it is since I can first remember when I was about 5 or 6, going with my dad. He was with the A and B teams, then the junior teams. So Saturday mornings he'd take me to Melwood with him, or I go to away games with him. The likes of Everton, Man United, Man City, at the training grounds, not at the main grounds, because they were under 18s at that time. But my dad was looking after them. He finished with the first team playing in 1965. His last game was actually Inter Milan away in the European Cup semi-final. Was his last first team appearance for Liverpool, which isn't a bad one to go out. Pity it wasn't the final, but if you're going to go out on one, it's not a bad one to pick, even though obviously at the time I don't think he knew it was his last game. He stayed as a professional for about 2 or 3 years, played in the reserves after that, and Bill Shankly must have seen something in him, coaching as he was playing and how he was off the pitch and that, because football's obviously been his life as well, apart from the family side of things. And Bill Shankly asked him to go with the A and B team as a coach in 1968, which he did. Stayed there till 71. And went to the reserves in 1971. Did the reserves till 1974, and then when Bill Shankly left in 74, my dad went up to the first team then. So my dad never actually coached in the first team with Bill Shankly. It was Shankly leaving when he first went. He played under Shankly from 59 to retiring in 65. So he was involved directly with Bill Shankly then, but he didn't actually join the first team as a coach until the summer when Bill Shankly resigned in 1974, or retired rather than resigned.
Wow, because I'm looking at this photograph here and I can see it here. And is this around that kind of like that time, or is it
this would be around 71? This was probably when he went to the reserves, because Joe Fagan left the reserves. Then Joe Fagan's obviously on my dad's left. He left the reserves then to go to the first team in 71. The man on the far right as we look is Ruben Bennett, who was a Scottish lad who was the coach of the first team as well. And obviously on the other side, I would imagine most people know the other two are Bob and Bill on the left-hand side.
Oh, yeah.
So, but
that was a first for me. I didn't realize all these years, because you'd always see him together and you'd always see him in the same tracksuits, or even the coaching tracksuits or the kit tracks. So I never realized that your dad didn't train or coach under Bill, and it was after that.
He coached the reserve. He was with the reserves, which is obviously then it's different than now with the way the under 18s and whatever work, that they're not actually sort of connected with the first team. But then first team players who've been injured or lost form were in the reserves. So obviously my dad's working with Bill Shankly on a day-to-day basis, just reserves and first team. Obviously my dad had trained the first team as well during that time. If there was a bit of crossover or players were swapping around and that. So he didn't not work with Shankly, but he wasn't actually first team coach until Bill Shankly left. which is a fact
Yeah, well,
a lot of people don't realise.
Yeah, I was going to say, Paul, in terms of obviously a massive trophy haul, about 24 major trophies, your dad helped in terms of that era as well. As a kid growing up, as a young lad, we obviously, when would you say like that it kind of dawned on you like how big of a magnitude that era is, such a historic era in relation to Liverpool Football Club? Were you well aware at that young age how good Liverpool was and how much of an important role your dad and the group of lads were obviously thrusting upon the European stage and English football, mate?
Yeah, it's one of them things. He'd obviously sort of like it's hard to explain, but with it being my dad, it was my dad's job. So I was 12, as I just said. Well, when he went to the first team, I was 12 in 1974, and you basically it was then my dad's main job is to look after Liverpool Football Club, if you like, with other people. And if Liverpool were doing well, then my dad would keep his job and he wouldn't have to go somewhere else. And that's a lot of it. It's a weird thing to explain to people who support the club, because if Liverpool don't do well, their dads don't lose their jobs. Now, as 12, 13, 14 at school, up to 16 at school, and I got a job at 16, which makes it a little bit different. But you think, I don't want to move away from here. And that's always a possibility. Started the season, my dad used to say, my dad, Joe, Roy, Bob, they'd say, if we do well here, we'll be here next season. And that is honestly what they used to do. They didn't think we've got to win the league, we've got to win the FA Cup. It was a question of doing well enough, literally doing well enough to keep the jobs. And obviously we did over that period. My dad was with the first team 24 years. But it really was. And like people sort of, I've said this to people on other podcasts and things, they look, you can see them going, there must be more to it than that. There really wasn't. At the end of the season, you go, we should be keeping our jobs now. And it really was as down to earth and as basic as that. So you're saying people want them to win the FA Cup, win the European Cup, as we did in 77 for the first time. That was just something that obviously delight for the club, delight for themselves and the players and the fans. But it meant they had the job in season 77, 78. Or they were unlikely to get sacked under them circumstances. If you look, I mean, obviously it was a bit different then because there wasn't the turnover of managers wasn't like it is now, where you've got 3 managers in one season. I mean, I can remember back when Shankly was at Liverpool. You had Bill Nicholson at Spurs. You had Harry Catterick at Everton. Matt Busby at United, certainly for a part of that. Joe Mercer at City. You can name the managers at that era. And you look back now. Just someone said, who was Man City's manager in 2008? I haven't got a clue. I couldn't name it now. You could say, oh yeah, it was him. But you couldn't pick it out. So the continuity of employment then was much different. If you did well, you kept your job. It might sound simplistic to say it, but if you're doing your job, you keep your job. And the job my dad had was obviously a fantastic job, which you give your right arm to do if you got the chance. But at the end of the day, he didn't want to change jobs. So he wanted us to do well. So you do your best for the club and we do well and you keep your job.
Yeah, no, it was that era as well, Paul. And then me and Kev, we watched that documentary last week as well. Like the managers were the physios and everything, weren't they? Back then, you didn't have the departments that you do see in every facet. You got data analysts for every department now, really. But obviously,
and your nutritionists.
No,
you look on the team pictures, 70s and 80s. There's 3 of them standing there, and then 4 when Roy, my dad, Joe, Bob Paisley. And if you notice when Bob Paisley goes off the pitches, no one's there then. There's just the 3 of them then. So they were doing it all. My dad was the kit man. Yeah. My dad did the kit man, they did the physio up to a point. You see some former players, who I'm not going to name, but some former players have put in the books about the sort of shoddy treatment they received at Anfield. If there was any problems, they got sent to a qualified physiotherapist or a qualified doctor. It wasn't me dad and Roy going, I think he's hurt his ankle and that's the end of it. They certainly do treatments at the club for, if you like, minor injuries. But if there's anything major, one of the players said he got treated for, he had a cracked ankle bone for something like 2 weeks before anyone noticed. It's quite annoying because they would be sent to the hospital, they'd be sent to the doctors, they'd be sent to a qualified physio. And So, you've got to sell your books type of thing. Maybe we did a book for my dad, but sometimes they put stuff in that's not strictly true. One of them said the machine wasn't switched on. It was attached to his leg, but wasn't actually switched on at the wall. And it's absolute rubbish, like, you know what I mean? But just demeans what my dad, Roy, Joe and Bob did at the club type of thing. But there's not many people done that. That's just the one. It was a one-off.
That sounds like some of the players were passing the buck away from, their own failures.
It was one in particular, to be honest. There wasn't more than one. It was one in particular.
Okay.
Never mind.
We won't say we leave it there in the legacy. No, but we were saying, as you were mentioning the book yourself there, Paul, I'll drag it up there on the screen. I mean, it's a fantastic book. And how did this come about? Did the lads come to talk to you, or was it like the two of you, all of you the three of you got together and kind of said, like, we're going to get this book out there, and whose idea was it in the first place to kind of do it? Because everybody expected documentaries and YouTube videos and this like that, but getting the actual book out there, which was a fantastic read, was it your idea? Was it the guy's idea, or did they contact you?
They contacted me. You see the two names at the bottom of the book there, Arnie and Carl. Carl's from over by Scarborough. He lives in Spain now. Arnie's an Icelandic lad. We were at to do with me dad and one Nick Tanner had organised. We were at that too. And I hadn't met Carl. I think I'd followed him on Twitter. He'd followed me, whatever. And he said, we want to do this book. Me and Arnie want to do this book about your dad. What do you think? So I said, well, I've always wanted to do a book about my dad anyway, so it's a decent idea. And then we just got together, the three of us, emails and messages and phone calls, and the book come from that. But I am very proud of that book, to be fair. I'm very happy we did it. And I say the only downside, not downside to it was, but we actually launched the book on my dad's birthday in 2017, and unfortunately he died like 3 weeks later. Which at the time he was in a care home. It sounds terrible, but he was just in the care home, going along type of thing. There was nothing wrong with him other than he had dementia. He was in a care home, but he ended up in hospital on, I think it was something like the 11th of March, and he lasted till the 22nd of March. The doctor said when we went in on the Sunday night when he got took to hospital, the doctor said he's going to last about 48 hours at the most. And he lasted 11 days. So that sums up what my dad was like, type of thing. He said he's one of the strongest old people he'd ever seen and sort of like the fittest. But in the end, like he passed away just after the book had come out, which wasn't a deliberate thing by us. We didn't rush it to get it out because he was okay at the time. There was no need to rush. But I've always wanted to do another chapter to the book because he's the end of the book, he's still alive. Basically, we talk about him having dementia, and that's not something we shy away from or hide, because it's something that a lot of people go through, and it's a terrible thing. And you do need, again, just slightly going off the subject, you do need support from people if you've got a loved one with dementia, because for a certain time the family tried to do it ourselves between us, and what tipped us over the edge, if you like, into putting my dad in a home. Someone said to us, we know what you think of your dad and that. He said, but if he had cancer, would you try and treat him for that? I said, well, obviously not. He said, well, he's got dementia and you can't look after him 24 hours a day. He just physically couldn't do it. So he ended up in the home. He was only in the home for about 3 months, but I 100% agree with that, man, because my own mother, she does home help. So her job is to go around to people's houses with dementia and look after them, change them, lift them up onto the beds, all this kind of stuff, And my own grandfather passed away with that as well. But like even for me, I seen it coming up to the point in time, just even before your dad passed, and it's been a long time since I seen your dad and Annie, because you watch a lot of like behind the scenes Liverpool stuff and these kind of documentary things, and I seen him just at the side of Melwood training ground, and he was watching the lads doing it on the pitch and stuff. He was in his 80s at this stage, and I actually nearly teared up because I said, that's Ronnie Moran. I haven't seen him in ages. And then he went on, and I think around the time he went to meet with Klopp as well. I think at this stage it was just close enough to that. I think it was just before that. That was February 2016. That was the week before we played Man City in the Carabao Cup final. It was the Carabao Cup then, whatever it was, in 2016. we spoke to Mel. We spoke to Peter McDowell from LFC TV. He works at the club now, and we just said, "Is there any chance I can take my dad to Melwood?" Well, it wasn't, for the last time type of thing. It turned out it was the last time, but it wasn't a deliberate thing. Yeah. As like, this is the last time he'll ever go. We were hoping we'd be able to take him again at some point, but it never worked out. But I say he's 82. That was just before his 82nd birthday. That we met Klopp at Melwood. That was a good day. I'm glad we did that. That was a day we enjoyed.
He looks fresh. He looked happy there, man. And I'd say Jurgen's he must be some man to meet. He's very approachable.
He come in. We were in a separate room. Some of the players popped their heads in and said hello, which was nice. And then Jurgen come in. Now, what he knew about me dad before he knew me dad was in that room, I don't know, but he'd certainly gemmed up on me dad before he come in on that, because what he was talking about there, he was talking about my dad's career at Liverpool. He knew he'd played, he knew he was left back, he knew everything in that conversation. He was in the room for about 20 minutes, but it was good. It's something it's very memorable for me as well. I never got a picture of it myself. I can't remember why now, because I take pictures with everyone else. I was sitting next to him for 20 minutes and never took a picture with him. I've never quite got the gist of why I didn't do it. But
because I seen you recently at a couple of events, and I seen you like photographs with Aldo or this and that. Because on Facebook and whatever, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to be doing that. I'd love to be doing this. That's the kind. I love all that kind of stuff. And
Well, I was just at the club last week.
Okay. That's nice. That's the one. Yeah, I seen that out there. It's amazing. It's just good to have such an affiliation, because it just goes to show you how much of a family Liverpool still is as a club, with regards people that have left the club and people that are still associated around the club. In the most part, I know that it's a big business now these days, and it's not like it was back in the day. But like, at least there's still you can see that there's an appreciation there for the whole history gone by. You don't see that with many clubs, maybe some of the bigger clubs around there. You don't see it too much these days, for me. But I'll go to another thing, because we're getting down to for a small bit, Paul, if that's okay. And there's this. I've seen that you've been traveling a lot, and the one thing that I've noticed with being a friend with you on Facebook for the longest while is you count every single game that you've been to, and there's always a number attached to whatever game you're about to go to. And I'm just kind of thinking, even if you look back to here, can you remember this? You probably will, because your whole lifestyle and your whole livelihood is around pretty much memories of Liverpool, memories of your dad, and your wonderful wife Julie. So I'm going to pop this one up on screen. You can tell me about it. Yeah.
Well, that was look at me hair, unbelievable. Funnily enough, I'd met Julie before this picture. I'd met Julie in 1982, but funnily enough, we started going out properly as a couple in June '84. So if you look at my hair there, and then I started going out with Julie a month after that picture, and look at me now. So there's one connection, is I've got a head of hair there in 1984, and now it's completely gone. So I think it's Julie's fault. It's not my. She actually said she wouldn't go out with me if I went bald like my dad. So she's obviously stuck with us. Like, so we've been married 36 years now. So we're not doing bad.
Yeah, geez. I've seen it. I often see the odd photographs. I won't throw them up there, obviously, but I mean, you've got two loves in your hand, and it's basically your arm around Julie, and the other side is the Erdinger glass, and so I just think, and I say, oh, he's having a good night now, so which is great.
Yeah, no, doing all right, yeah.
Which is good. But look, you never got into football yourself. You just kind of stayed on the sidelines. I know you're appreciative. You love football yourself. You seem to go to a hell of a lot of games.
Do a lot with Liverpool County FA. You go to quite a lot of the games as well.
I am at the moment. Yeah, it's the final season at the moment. I'm going to one tonight. I think it's Highton Athletic under-21s against Warrington Rylands. It's Everton's ladies pitch now. It used to just be the County FA main pitch, it was called. But Everton ladies play on it now. It's a fantastic pitch. They've built a stand down one side of the ground. The rest of it's fenced off. There's a TV gantry and everything there. It's a really nice place to be. It was always all right, the County FA. They always look after you type of thing. But with it being Everton's ladies pitch now, it's like a carpet. It's not funny for the players, but the lads normally play on AstroTurf or on the likes of Club Moor up by Anfield and that. And this is like a proper pitch. And they all start getting cramp about 70, 75 minutes in the finals I've been watching because they're just not used to play. It's walking on it. You can feel the difference walking on it from AstroTurf, but from a grass pitch that you would normally play on a Sunday. It's a massively different thing. Talking about me playing myself, I just played Sunday amateur football because I was lucky at the time because Liverpool played on a Saturday then. So you could play on a Sunday when my dad was with the first team. I started playing when I was about 16 in the open age leagues, played until I was about 40. So most of it was under Liverpool playing on a Saturday. So you could play Sunday league and it didn't affect the game on the Saturday, obviously. But I just played local teams. I was at Liverpool for about a year and a half when I was 16, 17. Played for the B team a few times, but I was never. It was Ronnie Whelan actually was the reason I realised I was never going to be a professional footballer because he signed from Home Farm in about 79, I think it was, so 17. Yeah. And he came and we used to train at Melwood on a Tuesday and Thursday night. And my dad and Roy Evans would take training. So there was, 15, 16, 17-year-olds playing. And my dad and Roy would do the training with Tom Saunders, John Bennis and people like that. And Ronnie Whelan had just signed for the club. And he come on a Thursday night to one of the training sessions. 17, same age as me, Ronnie. I think he's about 2 weeks older than us. But he was running around. And I was just looking at him going, now. He's just going past you, going back the other way. He was hitting the ball twice as hard as you were hitting it. He was hitting it cleaner. He was getting up for headers. He was doing so. I remember saying to my dad on the way home, I said, I can't do what he does. He said, well, not, he's probably going to be a professional footballer. He said, not many people can. A lot of the lads there can't do it. But it was funny. It was like one night, just sort of realised, oh, bollocks to it. I'm not going to. It's not worth carrying this on. I'm going to start watching. What
a guy to let you know.
I did say it was one of them. I remember the ball got cleared. We were defending a corner. I was on the same side as Ronnie. It got cleared out. He overtook me about halfway through our half of the pitch. Got to the other penalty area and had the shot. And I was still just in the centre circle. And I was like, oh, fuck no. And he wasn't running. He wasn't at full speed either. He wasn't even trying, a bastard. Like, he was just doing what he was doing. People don't figure Ronnie Whelan like a quick player, fast on his feet. You try and keep up with them. Fucking hell. I used to go to reserve games with my dad, and you'd be in the dugout, and the speed of the players moving around by the dugout, it's different than being at the match. I go to lower main stand now. I'm in the lower tier, the main stand. You're in row 26, and you obviously can see them moving about, and they're not going slow. But when you're down by them, it's a different thing. It's a totally different thing. It's not frightening. It's brilliant actually. You can see the difference in them. It's like now when I watch lots of amateur games, watch Sunday league games, or watch games at Robbie Fowler's academy, and you can see the difference in them players. There's just the odd player, and it's how they kick. It sounds stupid, but it's how they kick the ball. You can hear the ball. It's different. It's a different sound when they kick it. It's like that last Thursday I was saying to you, I was at the academy and Jota, Joe Matip and Fabinho came over to train the Robbie Fowler under 18s or under 17s it was. They're doing their coaching badges. So they came over and the ball's going to Fabinho and he's kicking it back. And you could see the difference in that from, how he's kicking it. It's a strange thing to explain, but it's so different. Professional football is so different than how people think they can do. I can do that.
They're absolutely built different, aren't they? Yeah, they're built different. They're just.
It's brilliant. It's a fantastic thing.
We have a question from one of the people that's inside in chat. He's one of our younger viewers, so it's probably a bit of a derogatory question, not derogatory, but he's saying rhetorical question. What am I saying? And he said, if it wasn't for your dad, do you think you would still love Liverpool? I think it's a bit of a rhetorical question myself, but
well, it's one of them things. If my dad had worked for Everton, I might have been an Evertonian, and then I definitely wouldn't have had any air. But that's a different thing. I don't know. You don't know who he'd have supported. My uncle, one of my his dad's sister's brothers was a big Evertonian. He was always trying to get us to go to Everton with him, and I wouldn't go because I didn't want to go anyway. But I didn't go with him because I wanted to watch Liverpool. But you depict one of the two teams. I don't know who I depict because the family wasn't really. The other members of the family weren't that bothered about football, and obviously, it's as you say. The question it never came up because it was just with my dad all the time at Liverpool. But
yeah,
I'd like to think of Liverpool.
Yeah, when I was a kid, you know, my uncle and my dad got me into Liverpool. Obviously, they were big Liverpool fans. My granddad before that, and he played at Middlesbrough as well back in the day, going years back. But But when they try to get into it, what I've noticed about Everton fans, especially the ones that lived around me, and I don't know if it's the same in Liverpool, but it almost felt like it almost felt like a Jehovah's Witness knocked on your door when an Everton fan was asking you to come over to their side. It was always the same. No, you don't want to be doing that, lad. You don't want to be doing that. Come over to us. Come over to us. And that's what it felt like to me, you know. But that was just growing up in, you know, old school Ireland. But you know,
it's obviously a bit different here.
Yeah, blue or red. That's it. Simple.
You get no choice, do you?
Well, it never came up. You know, it never. I understand the question. I would like to say yeah, but probably wouldn't have gone to as many games without my dad's influence and supply of tickets, shall we say, during the 70s and 80s. Like, you know, we weren't doing bad for tickets then for finals and that. So, it's not bad. I'd like to say I'd been a Liverpool fan, but I might not like football if it wasn't for my dad. You know what I mean? I might not like football and what do you call swinging doors? You don't know, do you? Like, you don't know what would have happened if it wasn't for my dad. And my dad had been a cricketer or an accountant or something, a banker, an accountant. You never know what path you'd have gone down, do you? Like, so. I'd love it to have been. I'd love to say I would have supported Liverpool, but
is there a moment that really? I know you've probably got a catalogue of amazing memories, but for you, really, mate, is there any moment that in particular that really stands out with you in terms of like a connection with your dad that really felt really stood out and you cherish really? I started to go. Yeah, I started to go to games. The first game I went to was 1969. Was Nottingham Forest at home in the snow in February. It's 1969-70 season. There's a few famous pictures from the game. There's one of Ian St. John in the snow. There's a flurry of snow behind him. He's trying to tackle the goalie, and it's quite a famous picture. It just luckily, or happens to be the first game I went to is that game. But I remember there was blue touch lines because of the snow and the orange ball. I remember that. I was 7 at the time. But the first thing I really remember, as you talk on connection with my dad, we played Leeds. My dad went with the first team, as I said, in 74. And we played Leeds in 74-75 season. I think we beat them 1-0. Steve Iway scored. And I was in the main stand, obviously, the tickets my dad had got us probably with one of my uncles or a fellow who lived next door to me dad who used to take us to games, Frank. And Steve Iway scored late on. And I was only, 13 at the most. I was standing on the seat after the goal and I looked down to the dugout and my dad was looking up at us and he did like, you know, a clenched fist, like, yes. And I did it back to him. And it's the first time we'd done it. We did it a lot after that because it became like so it's not a ritual, but like a little tradition that he'd look up after major goals if he remembered. And I'd look down if I remembered, but you didn't remember all the time, like when Davy Fairclough scored against St. Etienne. You know what the hell happened after that, like, but certain goals. There's actually, if you watch YouTube and stuff like that about Liverpool games, there's times when you'll see Liverpool score and my dad's in the dugout and he'll turn around and do that up towards the crowd. It's towards me, my nephew Ian, John, and my son David, when they would go on the matches with us. He'd look up after a goal if he remembered and, you know, shout at it, wave up at us.
He'd celebrate with you guys first before celebrating with the
team.
So
it's a real connection because you felt like you're part of what was going on. Because, you know, you got the man on the bench. Because you see people looking around going, who's he waving at? Like, you know, and then after a few seasons of it, they'd realise, oh, it's his lads back there with the family, like, type of thing. So,
I mean, this is brilliant for me personally because... Okay.
That one,
So
in the picture before, I was in Rome, obviously.
Yeah.
And when they come round with the cup, he knew where we were. Yeah, he knew where we were in the ground at the end. And when they come round, he looked up and found us in the stand with the cup and was waving up to us with the cup in one hand and waving with the other hand. So that was I was 22 then, so that's a good memory as well. Like, that was a good memory for us as well.
22 and 16 more years. Was it a bit while later? You said Julie, she got rid of the rest of them for you, was it? You were saying?
Yeah, she done me just after that.
But I know, like my dad, he'll be delighted with this interview really, because I mean my dad was a coach, and he was a coach for the Youths Ireland team as well for a good while, and he always based himself on your dad, you know. So the one thing that he always wanted to do growing up was to meet your dad and stuff like that. But he was never a man for flying. He didn't like flying too much. So you know, so he never. Yeah, no, that's what we used to have to do. He didn't drive. He never drove. He never did that, you know. And we used to have to just like get the bus from here to Dublin and across to the ferry, and then our else go across to Wales and travel up that way. And it was long in the 80s and 90s to try and do that. You know, there wasn't as many trips going and stuff like that. You know, so but like he'll be over the moon when he sees this. You know, for from a personal point of view, for me anyway. But getting into it, we're going to get into the modern side of what we think of Liverpool now at the moment, what we think of the team, and maybe, you know, would you mix and match? Would any of the new guys get into the old guys' team, or would you mix and match them? But what do you think Jurgen's doing at the moment? Do you think? I know we've had a bit of a dip at this season, but I put it down to basically a lot of mental fatigue, physical fatigue, a lot of games. Just a lot of time spent training and on the pitch in the last 3 or 4 years. And I think as the team as a whole, I know we need to develop them a bit more and add in talent, as we've seen recently. There's more on the way. But sometimes, you know, Jurgen needs to be given a bit of slack as well, because what he's done with this team has been ridiculous as well, you know.
Yeah, well, the last 6 years, you know, you can look back. Obviously, it's easy to come out with a massive long timeline like 6 years, but if you're a Liverpool fan who hasn't appreciated how we've played and what we've done, all right, you talk about league championships, we've won one, which was unfortunately, like, you know, the end of that COVID season. But it's the way we play now. We're playing different. Obviously, I've watched the teams a lot over 54 years since the first time I went, and there's more. People don't seem to realise it now. That's I don't know if it's selfish, it's the right word, or expecting too much. There's some of the moans you get at the game, you're like, oh my God. If you know, I was looking back on my books the other day, and there's games where we've not won for 4 or 5 games on the start. We've got beat by, you know, Sunderland, we got beat by Southampton. Talking in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. That's now. There's massive inquests, and this isn't good enough, and he's shite, and everyone's shite. There's never
everybody expects everything immediately, don't they?
I don't feel, honestly, it's easy for me to sit here and say, like, I don't think there's enough positivity around what we're like. All right, you know, City winning the league 4 out of 5 years or 5 out of 6. There's reasons for that we can't compete with. But the only team that competed with them for 3 of them 5 years, we beat them the other year. We made the balls of it this year because of how we played in the middle of the season from, you know, November, December, January, where whatever happened. But as you say, that's tiredness, but they're not allowed to be tired. You're not allowed to not play well. It's not too, the way I sit at the ground, it's not bad, but you can hear some people, and generally the people who don't go all the time, and people on Twitter, people on Facebook, and they talk some absolute shite.
Yeah, I'm in the same milk as you, Paul. I've been saying it for ages. I've been listening to this. A lot of guys just don't. I find that the fan base has kind of grown by, let's say, another 20-22% since Liverpool got good in the last 6 years, and the majority of them you can find talking on Twitter, to be honest with you.
It just heightens everything, doesn't it, sadly? In terms of, like, in the 70s and 80s, there was no social media. Like, it was like especially Liverpool's fan base.
The excuse that these fans use as well, Jack, is they turn around and say they're professional footballers, they're getting paid the amount of money. But I said they were professional footballers back in the day. But I said these guys look after themselves. But 63 games in a season, that's a lot of games. But when you're talking training as well, 5 days a week minimum.
Well, we talked about it a while ago. You know, when you go on holiday, you go on your flight. All right, you've got to sort yourself out. You've got to get your bags, and you've got the wife and kids, or, you know, family with you. Players are doing that all the time, and people come off holiday, go get on the first day of the holiday. I'm not going outside. I'm knackered. So you've got to go and play a game of footy now. you got to go training now and then play tomorrow, and you're playing a European Cup tie away in Napoli or something, and you say, well, he's a bit tired. Oh, you shouldn't be tired. I said, well, you're tired. You're only going to Lanzarote for 2 weeks, and you're saying you're tired coming back. I says, you've got to accept that they're human beings as well. That's the other thing. You know, do you think they're Superman? And they're not. Sometimes they do things that you couldn't do yourself. But generally, and you've all got, you know, it's even talking about the mental things about football. And, you know, people say, well, the players, they're tired mentally. Well, they shouldn't be. Well, they're human. You know, it's like that last night. You saying them Roma players Roma are playing a team on Sunday called Spezia. Now, Spezia have got to win to stay up because they're level on points with Verona. Now, you're not saying to me them Roma players are going to play that game on Sunday the way they would have done if they'd have won last night or not played that game last night. Because the human beings, they just lost the final. Now, it might end up, it doesn't matter to anyone here, but it might end up sending Verona down because Roma got beat last night in the cup final. But it's all a mental thing because they won't approach that game on Sunday like they would have done if they'd have won, or they would have done if they hadn't played last night's final. And it's that mental thing to it.
It's like a soap opera to some people, I think, to be honest with you. Well, it's like they're watching a TV show and it's just always going to play out and they're waiting for when the twist is going to happen. And if something doesn't go their way, it's just like they can. Yeah, like you're 100% right, because I've been crying like this since the start of the season. As Jack knows, every show I'm on, I repeat the same thing over. I said this team is mentally and physically fatigued. I said we're lucky to get the display that we did against United. We were lucky that we beat Newcastle twice this season. We were lucky, and I said it's not just luck either. These players have heart, so don't say that they don't want to play for the club at all. Yeah, I said just tired. They have no help because half the team is injured that are there supposed to cover them.
That United game, I was lucky enough to be at the game. Now we were talking about the next day. Obviously, beating them 7-0 is brilliant. Yeah. For us, it was brilliant at the time. It was 6 brilliant goals in the second half. But on the Monday, we were talking about the lads that knock around with and that would go to the matches, not with us, but go to games. I said, if you'd have gone home for whatever reason, at half time, we were 1 up. If you'd have gone home and then someone said to you, there was 6 goals in the second half, you'd never have said 7-0. You'd have gone, oh, fucking hell, I hope we won 4-3. You'd never have said it was going to be, because United had 4 better chances than us in the first half. Because I was watching it the other day. There's a thing on there, YouTube Inside Anfield. It's called. It's good.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
It's the action from the match without a commentary with camera angles that you don't normally see, like the low level camera angles.
Yeah, I watch it religiously. Yeah.
So if you watch that, watch how many chances United have in the first half, and then if you, as you say, whatever circumstance it would have been, if you're going on a flight or something, you watch the first half and then land, and someone goes, there was 7 goals in the game. What was the final score? You wouldn't have said 7-0. 7-0. You'd never have thought we were going. I'm glad we fucking did, but you'd never have said it. Yeah. But I actually nearly shot myself in the foot that day because I said when it was 6-0, if Bobby Firmino comes on now and scores, I'm not coming to the match anymore because that'll be the end of it. Yeah. And then he come on and scored. They're all like, we're not coming on. And, well, no, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't think he would for the start. And
like I wasn't there that day myself, Paul, because I've been lucky enough from next season onwards for the next 7 years of getting I've got a hospitality season ticket now for the next 7 years. I saved up for it and we're doing that thing. So I'm going from next season again religiously, which is great since before the pandemic. But I'd say inside in the stadium in that game, when Bobby comes on and scores the 7th after everybody knows he's going to leave at the end of the season, I'd say half the stadium was bloody crying. I'd say
poetic the way the season has panned out with Bobby.
Yeah. Even the equaliser against Villa, even that goal, it's amazing how it's panned out. But he said, he says he's leaving. He doesn't. Where's he's going to talk about Barcelona, aren't they? And that, but PSV's fellas just said today Messi's not playing after the last game on Saturday or Sunday. He's finished. He's leaving PSG. So where's he going? If he goes back to Barcelona, he might want Firmino. So you never know. You never know in football. I don't like all these stage managed farewells. I think it's all bollocks. It's like when Steven Gerrard left. We got beat by Palace that day 3-1 because they were all picking about before the game, walking around the pitch and waving and that. We haven't played yet. Play the game and then possibly do. But I didn't even the stuff at Anfield, you know, with Firmino and Keita and that, and the other day. If you leave, like, you know, just go. It might be a bit of a harsh attitude, but, you know, if you go, like, type of thing. You don't need to be waved up into the sunset, like. But that's just me.
Yeah, Paul, we mentioned in terms of obviously drawing parallels in relation to, obviously, we just spoke about the quality manager that Jurgen Klopp is in terms of, would you draw any parallels, obviously, Shanks and Bob and your dad and the work in which they done in like the 70s and the 80s as well, mate? Just, would you draw any parallels? How special for you in reality is, would you say there's any similarities in terms of the management structure from Jurgen Klopp to obviously that era?
I would. You just said before, you've seen that video, the boot room video.
The boot room
and at the end, you can see the similarities are actually highlighted in that. You'd say Klopp is the first one, obviously with Linders and is it Kravite's the other fella's name? I can never remember his name, the black-haired fella, but they're all doing the same jobs that Joe, Bob, my dad, Roy, and Bill Shankly were doing, in as much as they're managing the club. They seem to want the best for the club. You get some managers, I'm not talking about former Liverpool ones, but they're looking for themselves all the time. They're looking for what they're going to do next. Klopp come to Liverpool with a plan to put us back winning the league, and we did. All right, 3 years ago now, 4 years ago now. We've won the Champions League again, which when we were in Rome 84, you sort of think, well, that might happen again, especially after Heysel. So you don't know what's going to happen with that. And then we've won it again. Obviously, we won it in 2005, which you could say was against the odds. It probably was against the odds, to be fair. Certain games on that run, you know, when you need to score against them, 2 against the Olympia or 3 against the Olympiacos, which we do. Then the semi-final against Chelsea, I was in line with that. It went in, that goal.
It was over. Yeah.
I was in line with it. We were in line with the goal. It went in. It definitely went in. It was no... I'd rather it hadn't gone in because it annoyed Mourinho that much. I'd rather it hadn't gone in. It would have been more annoying. But it did go in. It went over the line. Then obviously you're 3-0 down in the final at half time. And you think, I hope we don't get battered here. We were all settling for 4-1 and 3-1 at half time. You know, it was just as long as we don't let many more in, don't let like 4 or 5 in the final. And then obviously the second half comes in.
Did you go to that one?
I couldn't go. I didn't go to Turkey. You know, there was a family illness, an ongoing family illness at the time, which preceded the Chelsea games even. So we said, we're not going to go no matter what happens type of thing. So we never went to it in the end. It was a family illness like type of thing. So we didn't go to that, which I've never regretted not going because I'd rather we stayed and did what we did than went to Turkey. But that was the only reason we didn't go type of thing. My son went to Athens in 2007 and with my nephew, my son David, went with Ian. And then Ian went to Paris in 2019 because David's wife was having a baby the week before. So he was never going to go from, 6 months before the final. And then Paris, Ian went to Paris last year, but that was another problem type of thing. But that was another, because we weren't going to go because it was in St. Petersburg, and obviously that changed. So when it moved to Paris, we just said no. Well, we said we weren't going to go to St. Petersburg, so I'm not going to try and dive. Or he didn't get a ticket anyway, as it turned out. We couldn't get them anyway, like through the club. But that's a different story. Like, but Ian managed to get one in the end, and he went. But he said it was using the phrase an experience. So I don't think he enjoyed it that much at the time.
Yeah, your wife needs to clamp down, actually start doing the job, sadly, mate.
Well, did you see the video from last night? Have you seen the video from last night of the Liverpool fans doubling in through the gates and no one stopping them, no one saying nothing, putting one ticket in and 2 are going through the gate each time. And it looked organised. They were all doing it. They were all in 2s before they got there. Because it wasn't like the person behind him had the ticket and he was looking at them. They were all in, someone with a ticket and someone without a ticket. And they were going in. There's no stewards, no one stopping them. Imagine our fans trying, any English club trying to do that. Chelsea trying to do it, or United or City. They'd be getting battered on the other side of the turnstile. It's Rome and no one's bothering.
Yeah, we've seen that 7 months ago, weren't we, with our end in the final, sadly, mate, in terms
of... Well, it's like the ticket thing. They were saying about all the forgeries. People were trying to put the ticket through and it was showing red. and it was showing red 4 times, and then going green the 5th time they presented the ticket to the scanner. But that scanner's then saying there's 4 forged tickets tried to get in when there was none. That's where all the forged ticket stories come from, and people trying to get in with black tickets. It was not. It was completely wrong. But obviously, with it being Liverpool, everyone just jumps on the it's them again.
Yeah,
they're doing it again.
Yeah,
and then that's where it comes from. I've had a few arguments this season with people at games, in non-league games, when you said, you're from Liverpool. Oh, you're trying to get in for nothing and all that. Like, when you're watching some crappy Welsh non-league team type of thing. Oh, did you get in for nothing? No, pay to get in like you did, lad. But that's another story. That's for the different.
Another podcast, really, isn't it?
Probably. Yeah.
We'll turn it to Three Cranky Men podcast in a minute.
We could do definitely a whole documentary series. On a positive note, Paul, in terms of obviously Dad's testimonial, Liverpool versus Celtic. Kev, do you want to roll this for?
Roll it there, Roisin. Hang on, I'll do it there now. Where's that? Here we go. I love it.
Days after the season's finale, a fitting tribute to one of the old boot room boys. Ronnie Moran, a Shankly disciple, given a never-to-be-forgotten testimonial against Celtic. 50 years, boy and man, he served the club. 33,000 turned out to show their gratitude. Some of the legends took to the hallowed turf in a pre-match exhibition. Alan Kennedy scored. And Stan Boardman, ex-Liverpool apprentice, set up Steve McMahon. And Ian Rush scored his customary cop-end goal. Then the legends made way for the stars of today. Robbie Fowler set up Eric Meyer for his first Anfield days after the season.
That doesn't keep skipping back. Here we go. Right. That was a nice one, yeah. So it's just like, there's you're going back through history there, and I know you said yourself, Paul, you're not one for kind of fan flair and stuff like that. But if people that were part of that boot room club are probably in my opinion, are probably the only people that ever deserve to have like a whole city say goodbye to them, in my eyes. Shanks, your dad, Fagan, Kenny, Jurgen when he goes, because no matter what he's won, because if I go to say, I'm going to say it the way I've been saying it all season, just to be kind of upfront. If it wasn't for Liverpool, the Premier League would have been a farmers' league for the last 6-7 years, pretty much, because City would have had no competition and nobody else would have been anywhere within 30 points of them. So, I always turn around and anytime I get, a bit of banter left, right and centre off any other teams or whatever, and I'd say, look, without us, you wouldn't have a league this season. You wouldn't be able to develop and try and catch up with us, and and people would stop watching. It's just the way it is. But look, the main thing is that the club is still in a good way that it is. I mean, if you go back to, I know we've had a bad season this season, we've had a bad season the year after we won the league, but even in that season we still got third, with no defence, no midfield, and we just didn't manage to do it again this season because for me, there's only a handful of teams that improved this season. I think City stayed pretty much the same, and they changed their style of football as well. They went to long ball with Haaland, but if they didn't have Haaland, I think City would have been down in 7th or 8th for me. But it's just because the amount of goals he scored, but they completely changed their style of football. It's only later in the season they started playing the way they normally played. For us, we dropped off. I think United stayed the same. They were 11 points behind, worse off than what they were with Ragnick and Ronaldo last season. And they just stayed the same. Newcastle, Arsenal, Brighton for me improved, and Aston Villa in the last 6 months. So it just goes to show that even though they've improved and we've dropped off, it only takes the slight shift or a slight bit of help in this Liverpool squad to bring it back up to where it should be. And it showed that in the last number of games, when not losing in 11 there on the bounce and stuff like that. And we do tend to go on late runs in the season. So if we do get in the likes of, we've been linked with McAllister and Thuram and Kone and all of these guys at the moment, and if we do get these guys in, do you foresee that we'll be back straight up there next season, or do you think there's a couple of windows need needed to kind of bring us back to where we are.
Well, it's obvious. I've had to move, by the way, because the iPad was on 2%, so I've had to come downstairs and put it on charge. So that's why the picture's changed. I forgot it was on the top right-hand corner there, because I think it's
first world problems.
In all action, walking down the stairs, and trying to remember where the thing was, the charger was. But that's why I've moved. It's no other reason. I just moved for that. No, I think it obviously depends who you sign. The ones you've mentioned, that McAllister, will he be able to do a job in the midfield? You would hope so as a World Cup winner, because you're not signing an idiot type of thing. You're not signing an unheard of player. Or are we signing him because he's a World Cup winner? He's got to fit in with the team. But obviously the team's going to be different now that the likes of him are coming. If he comes, you've got to wait and see. I mean, obviously they're working behind the scenes. That's why I always say, do you think we should sign him and him? I say, well, I don't know, because I don't know what they're like. Yeah. I don't know what they're like off the pitch. I don't know if he's a pain in the arse. I'm not talking about McAllister. I'm just a player. You don't know if he's a pain in the arse. You don't know what his background's like. You don't know what his family life is like. You don't know how he'd adjust to playing at a club like Liverpool, which is different than playing at Brighton, if you're going back to the McAllister thing. I hope we sign him. I like all the Argentinian football, and I follow River Plate in Argentina. So it's something that you'd be happy with an Argentinian playing for the team. But
yeah, I think Henderson needs help in there, definitely, because I love Jordan Henderson, because I found that until he got, I remember he used to have a lot of injuries in his middle of his career for a while, until he broke his ankle and reshaped it, wasn't it? And ever since he's been constantly available. Yeah, so he's been constantly available ever since. And for me, next to Stevie and next to Souness, he's one of my favourite captains, because I think he's held, he's got what the club is about. He's held himself in the fans with high regard. And I still think there's another 2 or 3 good years of Henderson showcases to come in and help the team. Even though he's been a bit off the boil this season, but I can still put that down again, because I've got eyes that it's down to mental and physical fatigue, and I don't think anybody else has been running as much on the pitch the last 3 seasons than that guy, which was a guy that couldn't even string 7 games together at one period because of that ankle issue. So the fact that he's turned his career around at Liverpool and gone on to what he does, I just think that these guys need to prop up the ship, no matter how long, and he is our captain, how long they're going to be there. I think Fabinho, you don't just become a shit footballer overnight, He's tired as well, and it showed you the other day when we were playing against who was it, what was the last game of the season, and Milner was starting, and Southampton, and Milner was starting, and George was starting there, but it seemed like Fabinho was doing all the running and all the work, and he was tired until we made the changes. So it just goes to show that these guys just need help in the middle of the park, but they also need a bit of youth, but a bit of quality. I think McAllister's coming in as maybe, I know he's not too old, but he's probably the oldest of the crowd that we're being linked with at the moment.
I think he'll settle really well.
Yeah.
I've watched quite a lot of Brighton this season. It takes a lot of characters, Paul's alluded to play for Liverpool, in terms of obviously representing Argentina. Those are fanatical South American teams on an international stage, aren't they? So, but I think he's got the right attributes, and I think we will be back up there, boys.
Absolutely.
We've got Jurgen Klopp, we've got the infrastructure already in place, and I think we're not too far off where we want to be next season. But I really do love him. He's got all the technical attributes, really. I feel
we call it a dip, Jack. We call it a dip.
But we're allowed that, aren't we? As we've
of course.
always alluded to, and we've always spoken about.
You'd look next season, you'd want Gakpo and Diaz to step up next season if obviously Firmino's gone. You want them two to step up. Gakpo certainly didn't let himself down this season. Diaz suffered a bad injury which affected him. You could see when he come back, there was certainly a little spark there with him. But even the Tottenham game when that fella volleys him and then nothing happens, that the lad who Jota ended up kicking in the face type of thing. But he done him early on in the game. And he was coming back from an injury, and then someone cuts him in half, and the referee doesn't see it. That's another matter to talk about referees. But he'd even like to say, would Nunes benefit from a pre-season at Liverpool? He may well do. He may well. I just think sometimes he's a bit of a loose cannon on the pitch. He seems to be annoyed when he's not playing from the start.
He's a nuisance, isn't he?
Well, he is.
Yeah,
he's one of them. When he
yeah.
played against us for Benfica, he was an absolute, he was
Oh.
a nightmare playing for Benfica against us. We wish we had him, and then you get him, and then he's tripping over the ball and standing on the ball.
I was talking to Jack throughout the season, and we were talking to the chat, and I kept like alluding to the fact that I don't think Gakpo's best position is through the middle or out in the left. I think his best position is where Thiago has been playing for us. I think him driving a bit deeper and then moving, because what I've loved about him is his ability to win the ball. He must win 95% of his headers, and he nearly knocks him down onto somebody every single time. And I'm thinking that if he's in that position right behind Nunez and Diaz in that little triangle, I think Salah's going to score goals all day long, because they'll just drag out the whole team over. To that side.
Multifunctional player, Paul.
Yeah.
Like the special players like that, Kenny and even Stevie at certain moments as well. Like the ability to play a variety of positions. Really, it's Paul. Like even go back to obviously the Kenny Dalglish days. Like it was how much do you reckon would you say Kenny would have been worth in like today's market? He was a special player when he was.
He was. He's still he was my dad's favourite player as a coach. My dad's favourite player was Billy Liddell when he played, and then it was Kenny. He'd be say priceless, because he wouldn't be like. But you look at the job he does. Like people that look at the old videos of him and say, "Well, he's too slow. He wouldn't be able to play now." But you'd adapt the game to. It's like someone said to me the other week, "Would your dad be able to coach now?" And I said, "Well, not from a standing start, but if it's developed along to how it has now, then he would have developed with it." Because 1955 was different to 1985 and 1995. The coaching methods then, and he adapted with them and lived with them. It's a different thing saying, could he do it now? When it obviously be a bit difficult in many ways, but from 1998 when he retired to now, there's massive differences in the game. But if you're living with them and dealing with them as they come along, then you can live with it and adapt to it yourself, because it's all about adapting yourself to the circumstances you find yourself in. So I think Kenny could live in today's football easily. I'm trying to think who you could say he's like. The little flicks and touches and that. You'd say Firmino in that way. I'm not likening Firmino's career to Kenny. But if you're looking for the kid, people who didn't see Kenny play as such, it's just the little incisive passes, the little balls. So he could do the job. The best about 4 people could do now. Kenny as an individual could do all of them. So you're passing to Thiago, your positional play, of like the likes of Henderson as a positional play. You're tackling, he could tackle. He could put his foot in. He could do a lot, Kenny. He could do the lot, not a lot. He could do the lot. I'd love to be able to watch him again. I'd love to be able to see him for the first time again. I like finding videos on YouTube of the old Celtic games that I've not seen before. You see Kenny playing for Celtic in like 1974 and 75 and that. And you see the things he's doing then with the same things he did for us. But he was a phenomenal player. It's hard to explain why. You just suggest that people put Kenny Dalglish into YouTube and just watch him and see some of the things he did in games, in actual live circumstances in games. Certainly a goal against Crystal Palace is one. It doesn't get much coverage because of the goals he scored in, against Bruges in the final and goals against Everton and that. But if you ever put one against Crystal Palace where he chips it back across the other way into the far post from just inside the area, it's an unbelievable goal. It's a goal you'd never see the likes of it. I've not seen nothing like it since. So
yeah, it's the beauty of just watching the Reds in it, mate. It's so special. Even the great Ian Rush, you look at the sheer amount of goals Rushy did score for the football club, obviously our leading goal scorer in today's market. It'd easily be worth to obviously transition and be like easy 200, 300 million if you knew and you had hindsight, really. But what would you say was the biggest? You alluded to obviously the possible changes from obviously adapting from obviously the ever changing football revolution as itself every single 10, 50, 5-year period. It's like going back, Paul, in terms of obviously what would you say was the biggest change probably, I look at it potentially fitness. Like you look at Arsene Wenger coming in the 2000s. Well, the period he come in as well. Would you, obviously growing up as a kid, like watching the Reds mainly, what would you say was probably one of the biggest changes for you?
Well, it's playing wise, you'd say the fitness side of it. Even from that era then, although my favourite, talking about individual little things, the footballs themselves. I remember the Adidas Tango in the 1978 World Cup. We had some of them. My dad brought one home. It was not something like you'd never played footy with anything like that before. And you played football over the years, and people use the new match balls now for Sunday league games. And you think, how you kick the ball? It's doing
major level, aren't they?
Going all over the place, like, but stuff like that. As you say, the nutritional stuff, the players. It's the players' lives as well. You know, the players are more cocoon now. They can't live a life like, you know, going back to the same fella again, Ronnie Whelan, Steve Nichol, John Aldridge, and that. They could go out, not saying all the time before games, but just in a normal life. Now, if you say, you know, there was Adrian was in the local Sainsbury's in Crosby, and everyone's like, all people are looking at him. It's only Adrian, he's the reserve goalie. You know, he's not the top player. Like Van Dijk was in somewhere in Southport, and you find out about it. He's in Marks and Spencer's in Southport, and someone says it. You know, years ago, the players would just go out, they do the training, and then go out. Someone might ask them for an autograph, which is a different thing. You've got now like the selfies and that, like we were talking before. There's so much different things that happen now. It's different. I mean, it's a different world, full stop. So football's in that different world. It's there's so many changes. The coverage on the telly.
Footballers can't be as open as what they used to be either. You know, they can't be as out. You know, as you know, approachable as they, because there's so much danger out there. You know, there's so much. You see it on Twitter all the time. You know, call outs. The wrong type of girl can come up to you. The wrong type of person can come up to you and, you know, use your position to an advantage. So it's just it's not really as friendly as what it used to be back in the day. Because you know, but that's mainly down to social media. So as good as social media has been, I think it's been 20% good and 80% bad.
Downside to it. Well, you look again. Even I remember, you know, as a kid growing up, you'd have Football Focus on a Saturday dinner time, which you'd watch because it might show the goals from the week before that you hadn't seen. It wouldn't show the goals from every game. Match of the day, you've got 2 games on. You'd watch the ITV programme on a Sunday. Now, I put that telly on there. Now, we football on. And if there's no football on, you put Sky Sports News on and they're talking about football. And the problem is, there's not enough to talk about. So they not make stuff up, but they're repeating stuff. They're talking about stuff that doesn't need talking about. You know, they've got people outside the training ground. It's totally different. And you've got, you know, I'm saying Sky's been bad for football or BT or whoever's showing the matches, because it's nice to be able to watch all these different games. But sometimes you do think you're getting overwhelmed by it. And people listen to it and react. And people, if you notice now, I'm trying not to do it myself because hopefully just say you're old enough to not do it. People of a certain age talk like they're on the telly.
Yeah.
They talk like they're getting interviewed and they're just talking about football somewhere and they're coming out with sound bites and little catchphrases and that. You're saying, just talk about the football, you know, you're not getting interviewed. Just talk to talk to your mates about the footy. And they talk about this, you know, I mean, there's even all positions. When I played footy, first started, you've got your 11 positions, which everyone knew. Everyone knew what number you had on, was what position you played. You know, which people probably, though young, as you say, young viewers wouldn't understand. Your number 2 is the right back, your number 3 is the left back, right the way through to number 11 being the outside left. And then, you know, you're talking about stuff like that. Everything changes. All differences come in. You know, you can't tell people, where did Trent Alexander-Arnold wears number 66?
66.
Imagine my dad doing the kits. 66, and how can he be numbers? There's only 11 players. How can he be numbers? I understand the squads and that, you know, you've got all this stuff. But some of the things that are coming now, you think that can't be for the good of the game. I'm sorry. It just can't
so
be.
Connor from the Cop On podcast, he's a friend of the channel there as well. He said, how long realistically do you think it'll take to catch up with Man City and challenge for the title again?
Hopefully next season. You know, that's your aim at the start of every season. if, again, it's a big if we sign the right people who fit in with the club, we just need to. You've got to keep up with City. I mean, the year we won the league, you just absolutely blew everyone away. You know, that winning 30 and drawing 1 out the first 31 games. No one will do that again. Well, everyone does do it. They deserve to win the league. That was just a phenomenal run of games that we had. You know, obviously we made a bit of a balls of it at Luton that time, and not Luton, Watford. Sorry, I was thinking of Luton coming up then, the Watford one when he beat us 3-0. You could say, you know, do we think we'll catch up with City? I hope so, yeah. There's no point going into the season thinking we're going to be 30 points behind them. You just got to try and stay with them a bit better than we did this year. We didn't stay with them enough. Arsenal
The way I
did.
look at it, they weren't great either this season, I don't think. I just think Arsenal dropped off something fierce. City, I mean, they were at least, what did they finish on? It was 89, 90? They were still 11 to 13 points off where they normally are, you know, but even at that.
You know, this is the like.
Yeah, I think I know where Panov is going with this question. So he said, does Paul think we will spend what we need to in this transfer window? So I'm thinking there's a hidden FSG thing in there, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, again, you know, I'm not. It's a fair question.
Yeah,
I think we'll spend. You know, it's hard to say. I don't know who we're going to sign, so I don't know if we'll spend what we need to because I don't know who we're signing. You know, it's evading the question. I understand that. I think, as you say, it's will we spend enough? But what's enough? You know, who's the player you need to sign? This is one thing we say quite regularly now. Say someone joined this summer now. Every team gets a benefactor who comes in miraculously. Everyone does it, and they all get £1 billion, and they can all spend what they want on who they want. How many teams are going to win the league?
Yeah, let's look at Chelsea, mate. It's Chelsea 600 million.
One team. Well, one team's going to win the league. They've all got £1 billion. They've all got more than they need to spend. They've all got enough. But one team's going to win it, and 3 are going to get relegated. And they've just spent £1 billion. So when you say, will you spend what you need to? It's more, will you spend what you've got on who you need?
On the right players. Not
the amount of money. And I don't know who they're looking at buying. You know, we keep saying McAllister because he seems to be on the brink of signing type of thing. But, you know, we've signed other players in the past who've come through and then they've not done what you think they're going to do. And then you watch them playing, when you've watched them playing for the team they've come from, they've been an absolute nuisance against you. And you think, oh, I wish we had him. But then whether they can play for us, whether they can play how Klopp wants them to play, that's the problem with football, isn't it? If you knew what was going to happen, we'd all be millionaires, wouldn't we? Like, because we put bets on.
Putting a lot of numbers on it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Who's going to win the league next year? I don't know. Hopefully, us.
I have to apologise to Owen there because I was reading earlier and there was a comment and somebody said Connor, and then I looked down again and it was Connor. So Connor's from the Cop Council. The Connor's from the Cop Council and Owen's from the Cop podcast. And we all talk every single day in a chat. So don't ask me how I mixed that one up. So yeah, my apologies, Owen.
Owen, you've been called worse, Owen. I know that. So it's all good, mate.
Owen just recently became a dad as well. So yeah, for the first time. So
congratulations.
So yeah, I'm changing the subject away from my embarrassment. Anyway, right. So what is so he is what is it? Oh, yeah, that was his reply. Yeah, and I was replied. Well, look, lads, we're coming down to it. It's been 1 hour and 10 minutes. Jesus, Paul, man, I didn't mean to keep you that long. I was expecting 25 minutes and then to kind of get get some sort of a thing out there. But look, as long as I've always said, as long as lads like us and channels that are similar to us can keep talking about Ronnies and Kenny's and we're going to do it when you're at the game, but especially for the outside world that don't get to see it as much as we do or don't get to be involved in it or know these people or even look up Liverpool history, because when they look up Liverpool history these days it's just pop-ups of pictures saying, oh, Liverpool did this in 1974 and they did that, but they don't go into as in depth as what they used to. So as long as people like us can keep talking about what built Liverpool, and then it won't be forgotten. And we at least mention it every 2 or 3 podcasts where we go back to the old teams and then bring it back up again, and do comparisons and that. But it's great to get somebody who's been involved in it, from outside in and been home and away at the games like you have, and especially coming from the ilk that you've come from in your dad. So we very much appreciate you coming onto the podcast. Jack, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and I'll say a massive thank you, Paul, for taking the time out this afternoon, mate. And just obviously a massive thank you for you and your dad, all the work that you've done. As we said already in the pod, Liverpool is a family, everyone around the globe. But a massive respect to you, Paul, for jumping on, mate. We really do appreciate it. So thank you, mate.
No, it's
This
fine.
channel
I
is
enjoyed
fairly
it.
new for
It's
us.
been good to be on.
Yeah, this channel has been fairly new to us because we have our own channels. We've done it, but we're always jumping on each other's channels. And we said, Jack, we might as well just do something and create the channel that's gonna, do something. So more of a Premier League own show and do some classic stuff on it and things like that. And he said, yeah, straight away. So we're delighted to have you on. Thanks very much. We appreciate it, pal. I
No,
hope
it's
you and
fine.
Julie have a
Enjoyed it,
wonderful
lads.
weekend. Have you any plans coming up for any photography coming up, or have you anything? Have you got games coming up this weekend? I know you were saying there was a final.
Yeah, I've got there's one tonight up at the county FA. Then Saturday, me nephew's playing at Moran in a charity match with his the lads he does the running with. Then there's 2 games Sunday, and then there's not much on next week. Next week looks like being a bit of a blank week. And then I've got 3 cup finals again at Moran a week on Saturday from the Liverpool Old Boys League, and then I'm off to Amsterdam to cover a game there. Liverpool supporters playing a team from a place called Verden, which is by Utrecht. So I'm going over to Amsterdam for 3 days. So that should be good. I'm looking forward to that.
That's excellent. Is there any place that anybody can find your photography outside of Facebook, Paul? Or have you got a page or anything like that?
I'm on Twitter. On Twitter and Facebook. Twitter, it's at Paul Moran 62 on Twitter. All my stuff's on there, or anyone's quite welcome to look at it on the Facebook page I'm on.
Oh yeah, I'm always watching that stuff. All right, Pat, thanks very much, man. I appreciate that. From myself and Jack, lads, thanks very much for joining us in the chat. Thank you very much for the questions. We'll be back in another couple of days. We're going to do a Premier League live show, and we'll get some other fans on from other teams, so we can debate and effing blind at each other in the most respectful terms, if we can. But again, lads, thanks very much to Paul Moran for coming on, and make sure to go out and check out the book that he was involved with, Mr. Liverpool. And if you get the chance, check him out on Twitter. And
all the links will be in the description as well.
Yeah, they'll be in the description as well. So, lads, thanks very much. For myself and Jack, we are the Kit Men. And Paul Moran, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
See you again, lads.
See you later.
The Kit Man.